I love this. I'm looking at this mailbag thing that Josh Yohe had, and somebody sent in a question. I need your help in reassuring me that Hextall isn't actually still working for the Flyers and he is trying to destroy us from within.
That's so wrong.
So funny.
This poor guy. This is so wrong.
The Donut Bag is brought to you by ExpressVPN. Your data is your business. Protect it with ExpressVPN. For 3 extra months free with a 1-year package, go to the link listed in my Twitter profile. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of The Donut Bag. This episode of Welcome Back, Angie Carducci from Inside Hockey Magazine, and we're talking about the Penguins. It is basically the dog days of hockey, but just wanted to bring her on and figure out what happened. What is going on? I mean, we talk about this in the episode, but you know, when somebody asks, is Ron Hextall a double agent or is he secretly working for the Flyers or something like that? It's very head scratching, the moves that they've made or haven't made so far. So we try to make sense of it all. But first, we talk about Mike Ling. And he just announced his retirement. He was the legendary announcer, play-by-play guy for the Penguins. And this hit me hard. And anytime it was brought up, now he's 73 and he's been broadcasting for 50 years. So, you know, it's time. But the reason why it hit me hard is because I equate him with the other older people in my life. And I think, well, if he's retiring and if he's not feeling well, then how does that make me feel about the other older people in my life, like my parents and aunts and uncles and things like that? And, you know, it's just something that we have to realize that, you know, our loved ones aren't going to be around forever, and that's just a terrible thing to go through. You know, my parents, their health isn't great. My dad is going to be 87. My mom is 81. I should be lucky that they're still alive, but you know, they're not doing that great. So. You know, I've lost a couple aunts and uncles in this past year, and some of them just aren't doing well. So, you know, it's a part of life. You lose people, but it just sucks. So when I hear about Mike Lange going, I don't just think, oh no, well, I'm not going to hear him on hockey broadcasts. I think, oh no, what does that say about the other older people in my life? So, yeah, let's it stinks, but anyway, sorry to bring you down. I hope, but we do have a good talk, and you know, we celebrate him and try to figure out what the Penguins are doing. So anyway, here's my talk with Angie Carducci about the Penguins. Donut Bag starts right now. This entire talk might be about Mike Lange, if that's okay.
Well, that would be happier, because I was just going to ask if the Penguins were happier. I don't really know that they are. I think I don't think any fan is happy right now. I think everybody's starting to get the sad feel of reality setting in about what this team might be in a little while. So yeah.
I mean, well, let's talk about the team first, because what the heck kind of what was that one thing? It's like the horrible, terrible, very bad day or something like that.
Alexander, the terrible. Yep.
Ron Hextall is having a horrible, terrible, very bad summer. I mean,
okay, so you know, Ron Hextall is in a completely impossible position. Like I feel really bad for that guy. I think Ron Hextall's terrible, really no good, really bad day started when he took this job, frankly, because I don't know, this, in my opinion, the Penguins job was the worst job you could have taken in hockey. Like, there's no winning. First of all, there's no winning at this job in the best of times, because you win a Stanley Cup or you're a failure. Like that's the bar. So already you're up against that. And the fan base, it doesn't matter that the core is aging, that you're kind of starting to have to pay the piper for what you had to give up over those years to win the Stanley Cups. And every team eventually comes up against it. You've seen it with LA, you've seen it with Chicago. This is how it happens, So it's not a surprise that it's eventually going to happen to the Penguins, but the fan base, I think, doesn't really want to hear that at this point. And they still have Sidney Crosby. Hopefully going forward, they still have Evgeny Malkin and Chris Letang, who they're trying to sign before they become unrestricted free agents next year. And, the fans want more Stanley Cups before that happens, which is perfectly understandable. But on the flip side, your assets outside of those players are really diminished. And when you look around, and there were a lot of big trades happening around free agency, and there's a lot of money flying around, and people are shaking their heads saying, why isn't Ron Hextall doing anything? And you kind of look at the money and the assets he has to work with, and you're thinking, what can he do in comparison to what you're seeing here? Like he really can't play this game that a lot of these other teams are playing. He's not really going to be able to be in this. So the moves are going to have to be pretty conservative by comparison. And on the other hand, he sort of has a mandate to try to build for the future. So you're trying to do two things at once. You're trying to capitalize on the last few years you have of this core, and you're trying to build for the future at the same time. I just don't know how you even execute that. I think it's a pretty impossible task, and I'm not sure how he's going to pull that off. So more power to him. And honestly, him and Brian Burke taking this job, I give them a lot of credit, because it's not going to be easy.
Yeah, and you're right. He has this impossible tightrope act to follow to this do, like, win now, but also prepare for the future. Like that's almost impossible. And and just thinking, well, why didn't he do this? Why didn't he do that? Why didn't he get rid of some of these big contracts? It takes two to tango. It's like, well, why did he just trade Zucker? That's a high contract. Maybe nobody wants him. That's why. I
think it's becoming pretty clear that nobody wants to take on Jason Zucker's contract.
Right.
Like that's, that looked like an ideal thing you would be trying to do going into the off season, and it hasn't happened yet, which I think is a clear statement that they're having a hard time moving that contract, because based on the fact they were very happy to let Brandon Tanev's contract walk to the Seattle Kraken, I think the fact they would like to move Jason Zucker's contract is very, very clear, but it hasn't happened yet. What does that tell you?
Yeah. And I mean, basically we are in the dog days of hockey. There's not going to be much that happens until probably training camp. And so, I mean, something can still happen. Hey, maybe something can happen during the season, but to go into the season with the same goaltenders, that's a head scratcher. There could have been some cheap goaltenders to be had, but then again, it's not like he had that much space anyway, but still.
No, but then I heard some of the names. I was hearing, like, it sounded like they had a lot of interest in Darcy Kemper. Like that turned out to be a sort of blockbuster deal that included a first round draft pick. Is that I don't see the Penguins playing that game. That's just not a Ron Hextall thing to do anymore. So when you see some of the prices that were going around here, again, I just don't know that the Penguins were going to be that much in some of these discussions. And probably the best chance they had was if they could have gotten Chicago to flip Marc-Andre Fleury, which I have no doubt they had a discussion about with Chicago. There's every indication that Chicago wants Marc-Andre Fleury to be their goaltender, and that's the point of them acquiring him. So, that wasn't going to happen. So I think the Penguins found themselves in a situation where, okay, maybe if something happens down the road in the off season, we could look at it. But for now, we have to go into the season with these guys that we had. And I think what I found really interesting is that the guy that they have now tapped as their goaltending coach, and that was a move that was so overdue to me. Like, not making that change earlier was a huge head scratcher to me. So I think now that they have kind of come to terms with the fact these may be their guys going forward, they tap Andy Chiodo, a guy who is really responsible for a lot of the good that you've seen with Tristan Jarry and Casey DeSmith. Like, he's the guy who's largely credited with helping Tristan Jarry have that all-star season that he had. Just he would talk a lot about how he improved his habits, and that's just, kind of returning to square one at practice. And that's what he worked on, and it translated to the games for him. And that's who was working with him on that. And really that sort of discipline and that mental side of his game. And then another really good point is that Casey DeSmith is a guy who could have come with a real chip on his shoulder after he got sent down in favor of Tristan Jarry pretty much entirely for cap reasons that year. And he came back and had a strong season last year that you could argue might have been better than Tristan Jarry's on paper throughout the year. So came back not with a chip on his shoulder, but with really something to prove. And that's who was working with him there. So you have somebody who has worked with both of these players, kind of is very tapped in to their mental states and what makes them perform at their best. So, perhaps you get a different response out of them going forward. And I think that's the best you can hope for right now.
We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
I love this. I'm looking at this mailbag thing that Josh Yohe had, and somebody sent in a question. I need your help in reassuring me that Hextall isn't actually still working for the Flyers and he is trying to destroy us from within.
That's so wrong.
So funny.
This poor guy. This is so wrong. He can't win. Like I said, good luck with what you're trying to do here. You're trying to do both things at once. And, he's clearly a very patient man. He was largely responsible for rebuilding the Flyers organization, which is paying off for them years after he left. So I know Penguins fans don't want to hear that, and they don't want to hear that, okay, in a few years, it's going to get a lot better and you're going to see prospects start paying off, because that's not the mode Penguins fans are in. Penguins fans are in win now before Sidney Crosby is, stepping away from his career mode. So I get it. But again, I think you're left with a pretty tough situation. So pretty sure Ron Hextall is trying very, very hard to make the Penguins the best team they can be. But, his way is to be patient and methodical. And I don't know that you've seen the last of what Ron Hextall is going to do this year, but I don't think he could play that game that you saw play out on like the first day of free agency. And maybe he's a guy, I was looking at a list of current, like, unrestricted free agents who are still out there. And there's not a lot that are fantastic, but there are some names on that list that, could have value, but just made way too much money on their previous contracts. If they're not getting signed and they're starting to be looking for a home, maybe you're looking at some players that become budget signings for the Penguins down the road. And maybe that's the kind of patience that Ron Hextall is displaying right now, like just kind of waiting it out and seeing what's available as time goes on.
Yeah. It's still early and we're not even at the start of the season yet. We're not even at the start of training camp yet. So a lot could still happen. And, it's not like it's gloom and doom. This is a team that won the division last year, a very tough division. and they would have beat the Islanders if it wasn't for the goaltending. So
Yeah.
and I know they're worse. I know that, but
Yeah,
I mean,
they're a little worse.
but I think it's not. I have a feeling Nathan Legare and Samuel Poulin will maybe not contribute at the beginning of the season, but maybe toward the end, or is that too much to hope for?
Well, I'm starting to hear a lot more buzz about them possibly making a run at positions this year. And I wouldn't be surprised if you get a chance to see them on and off this year. I'm curious to see what happens, because I was starting to get a feeling about both of them that perhaps their stock was falling just a little bit, that maybe they weren't being perceived as quite as high level prospects as they came into the organization. But I am definitely starting to hear some hopes, that they are going to make runs in training camp or beyond. So, yeah, I'm curious to see what they can contribute there. And I think that's another really good point, is that going into this season, you're going to see potentially a situation that you haven't seen with the Penguins for a while, where there could be jobs open. There could be jobs up for grabs that, there are spots that aren't necessarily etched in stone, that, players could be, okay, this is a player that either could make the cut into the lineup or could go to the AHL, but the job is there to either win or not. So maybe those are players that could come in and really feel like they have an opportunity.
We'll see. How did the news that Mike Ling was retiring hit you? What does he mean to you? Because I knew it was coming. I knew that day was coming, but I still have not taken it well.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we all knew the day would come probably soon. He's very gradually sort of taken steps back, and we've all had the opportunity to get used to Josh Getzoff being in that role, and sort of becoming a new voice of the Penguins. Nobody's going to replace Mike Lang. No offense to Josh. He is what he is. He's a legend. It is what it is, and that's just an irreplaceable voice. So, but I think we have had time to get used to it. He's had periods of time that, for health reasons, he's taken steps away for the past couple of years. So I think the writing's been on the wall, but it does have a real sense of finality to it, and it's very hard to imagine Penguins hockey without him and without that voice as a play-by-play voice. I know they said he might show up on the broadcast occasionally, but I imagine that's just going to be as a little, piping in as a guest or something, and not doing any more play-by-play. So seeing him really step away from that is sad and hard to imagine.
Yeah, I mean, when I think of, like, as a kid, when I started to get into hockey and the Penguins, I got into it because I heard about this guy, Mario Lemieux, that was pretty good.
Yep.
And just listening to games on the radio, they didn't have too many games on TV back in the 80s. There maybe like 10 or 20 a year or something like that, but it was all about the radio. It's all about KDKA radio, and just listening to the games. And he's just so unique. Like, the way he pauses, like almost every single play-by-play guy is like, he shoots and scores, but Mike had that little pause. It's like, hey, showtime scores. It was just different. And nobody does. It's like, I mean, no, I think Josh Getzoff is just fine. Steve Mears is just fine. They're very good. But it's just Mike was just different. And I don't know. It's like nobody has come close to being anything like him.
No, and nobody's going to. He's just so incredibly unique. And like another of my favorites is Doc Emmerich, who just walked away as well. And that's another voice I just don't think is ever going to be replaceable. He had such a unique voice in the sport, where what I loved about Doc was that his excitement for the game was so palpable. And
a drive.
I mean, you just, yeah, like, right. I mean, you hear it and you can't help but smile. And like the joy, it was just, you couldn't listen to it and not feel joy yourself. And he was just so childlike in his love and joy for the game. And I think just even being around hockey for as long as I have, like a lot of times you become jaded by it and you're like, you know, you find things not to love about it anymore. And I feel like Mike never lost that. Like I'm talking about Mike Emmerich, but Mike Ling as well, I feel like was always a student of the game and just always loved the game. And those guys, I feel like you really got that from them. Like you got that joy and that utter love for the game. And that's just something that you can't fake. And the fans know it when you listen to them, you know it and you feel it. And that's what makes a fan out of you, of those players or those broadcasters rather, but also I think of the game. Like I've talked to a lot of people who talk about becoming a fan based on listening to Mike Lange. And I think he did that. I think he did that as much as any single player, even like a Mario or Sidney Crosby in the organization. And those are some pretty hefty names in the organization. So he really is just, he's a unique character. He's kind of a unique, quirky character as a guy as well. I'm definitely going to miss if he's not hanging around as much, getting a chance to be around like a living legend like that, because I was always a bit starstruck just even being in his presence. He just has such a presence about him. He's just one of a kind. It's going to be really a big change to see him, walk away like this. So like you said, Day, we knew what's coming, but I think none of us was exactly ready for it.
Yeah. I just hope he's okay. I hope he can enjoy retirement. And, I mean, I think he really wanted to do at least some games last year because it was his 50th year. And that is just crazy. Like 50 years doing something is amazing.
It's incredible. And also because I don't think you want to walk away from it. Like I can even speak for myself. Last year, I think about the last day I walked out of the arena and did not realize that the pandemic was going to become what it was, and that, that you might not be walking back in for a while. And you're just like, oh my gosh, like this isn't the way I want this to be. Like this is not right. It just, I'm sure for a guy like Mike Lang, that's not how you want to wrap up an absolutely legendary career. You want to do it more on your terms. So coming back and getting a chance to call some games and wrapping that up on his terms, especially if he had it in the back of his head that he might call it a day, I think that probably meant a lot to him.
Yeah. And I mean, he had his catchphrases, which were amazing, but there were some ones that were specific to certain events, like when they won it in 92 against Chicago, and he says, oh Lord Stanley, give me the brandy. But my favorite was Game 6 against Detroit in 09. It was, I think it was a Wednesday night game, and the Penguins won it. And he says, I'll meet you in the schoolyard for all the marbles on Friday night in Detroit. Like, oh my goodness, that's
was before the game. Yeah, it was after Game 6 and before Game 7. I remember. Yeah, it was after the game in Pittsburgh because they were headed to Detroit.
Yeah.
That was awesome. They actually had that phrase in the Penguins press box, like emblazoned on a wall. And it was, that was a fantastic phrase. And there's just kind of chills and of course stuff like that. When you mentioned the brandy phrase in 92, I mean, you never forget hearing that as a kid, and just some of them stick in your head for what they meant to you when they happened. So he has really etched himself into Penguins history at all of those key moments, and you will never hear them in your head without hearing his voice attached to them. And he's been there for all of these incredible years that the Penguins have had, and all of these incredible runs. So He's as key a part of them as any of the players have been. And, I remember him being part of all of the Stanley Cup parades and up on stage celebrating them. So he's just been part of everything. So very strange to imagine.
Yeah. And I gotta recognize the people that were with him in the booth also. Basically, they're basically two of them, Paul Steigerwald and Phil Bourque. Steige is maybe the most homer announcer in history of sports. Man, if anything ever happened negative to, like, if anybody did anything like bad to Mario, like I'm surprised like Steige didn't just go on the ice and start fighting people. He was so protective of the Penguins.
Oh, that's so funny. Yeah, I came up through KDKA in the sports department as an intern, and worked with my three anchors that I worked with at the time were the main ones were Bob Pompiani and John Steigerwald, and Paul was like a weekend part-time anchor. So got to work with him in that capacity as well. So yeah, he's a character, and I don't disagree with a word of that. oh dear. Yeah, pretty funny.
And that movie they did, The Sudden Death.
Oh dear.
So funny. But yeah, and Phil Bourque is
an all-time
awesome.
Classic.
Phil
is awesome. And I have to say, what I actually like about Phil is I think Phil is really good at being pretty honest. For both sides. Like I have definitely heard Phil, keeping in mind that he is employed by the Penguins and paid by the Penguins. I mean, these guys work for the Penguins. So at the end of the day, you kind of can't say too much about, if they do, go a little bit of the homer route, because that's who's signing your paycheck. And Phil kind of unabashedly is willing to say when something is the way it is.
Yeah. He does not hold back.
I admire that. I like that a lot about him.
Yeah. That's what I want. I want someone to tell me what actually is happening, or if something's not right, just come out right and say it, and he does. So yeah, he is awesome. But all right, well, great talking to you again. Do you have any have you been around town? Is there anything you recommend?
Oh boy, I've been around town like a lot lately, which is really great. I just had a friend in town from California who I hadn't seen in a good few years. So got the opportunity to kind of go around a couple spots that, like, okay, here's somewhere you should see or should eat at or stuff like that. So probably the best meal that we had while he was in town was one of my favorites downtown. I probably mentioned it to you before, but it's a Proper Brick Oven down right next to the Benedum Center.
So good.
I love it so much.
Especially now with the outdoor seating, like that little area between the buildings you could go. It's so
that's
cool.
Where we sat. It's so nice. You can sit outside, which I personally still feel infinitely more comfortable, and especially more now that, COVID's kind of having a little moment again. This is not great, so I feel much more comfortable outside, and love that outdoor seating. But you can just go and have your wood-fired pizza. The wood-fired oven is terrific, and their pizzas are tremendous. They have my favorite thing I actually just posted today on my Instagram is they have a really good sangria. That's my favorite drink there.
Oh my God, I love sangria.
So good. Yeah, they have a really good one there. I always get. I just feel like it completes the meal. So I get that. I get their white pizza. We had some like crispy Brussels sprouts there. So that was like the best meal. And then the other thing that we did that I hadn't gotten the chance to check out yet, but I'm definitely going to go back and spend more time there, is through the summer. Have you been to this little thing they've set up? They're calling it like the Allegheny Overlook Pop-Up Park. Down it's that area. They basically took part of the street, was at Fort Duquesne Boulevard or something like that, and they basically just made it like a little park thing. It's really cool. It's really nice. So we were walking around down there a little bit, and they they have some games set up. If you take your
Yeah.
family, they have some games set up for kids or adults. It's really fun. And they have benches set up. They have food trucks. They have like 2 food trucks there. I was looking at the menus. We didn't eat there that particular day, but I was impressed with the variety on the menus. Like they had kids menus, but they also had one truck was more of kind of a just sort of broad appeal type of food that was called Good Eats Pittsburgh. And then they had Blue Sparrow, which was like a globally inspired food truck. And they both just had so many good options. And I'm a vegetarian, and I found several things on both menus that I would have been happy to eat. So that was awesome. And they also have Brew Gentlemen set up there. So like a good variety of beers. So that was really cool. And I'm like, I'd like to go down again and just actually hit up the food trucks and the beer and spend some time.
It's very cool. It's really cool what they did there. And it's really cool, like on a weekend day, when the Pirates are playing, there's a nice little, like the area around PNC Park is really cool. It's like, they block it off to, there's only pedestrians allowed. And, they have a lot of things going on there. So really cool things that they're trying to do to bring people together and stuff. So very cool.
Get downtown kind of going again, which is nice to see.
Are you doing the Yinzer race?
I am actually doing it virtually because unfortunately, I signed up to do it in person. And then at the last minute, I realized that I had a vet appointment at the vet, that's the specialty clinic, PBSEC, that morning, and try getting into there. That was like months. For the specialist.
You don't want to mess with that.
I can't cancel that appointment. So when I realized the date, I'm like, I've got to.
Cool, you could do it virtually. It's cool, you could still do it, and that's like every race now. They give you a virtual option.
I know, but I really wanted to do this one in person because they're having like some Pittsburgh celebrities there. I think they're having some of the sports mascots. So there's a lot of
have you done it before?
Stuff going on. No, it's new, right? I think I don't think it's ever been before.
It's been around for a few years, the Yinzer thing. I actually was a couple years ago. I was dressed as a Heinz ketchup bottle, and I won the prize for best costume.
That's amazing.
And this year, I am going dressed as Mr. Rogers, which is either the best idea ever or the worst idea ever. I'm just hoping it's not too hot, because running in a cardigan and a dress shirt and a tie and slacks in hot weather is not a good idea.
Yeah, and it's like longer than a 5K. It's 4.12 miles, right?
Oh my God! I thought it was 4.12K.
4.12K. Okay.
So it's less than.
Oh, so it's actually less than a 5K. No, I think you're right, because in my head I'm like, okay, a 5K is like 3-something miles.
Right.
So this is longer. Okay. Oh,
it's the Mario one that's 6.6K, which is longer than the 5K, which is like.
So that'll cut you a little break, but that sounds very ambitious.
I just hope it's because in theory, it sounds like a great idea to dress as Mr. Rogers, but Mr. Rogers drenched in sweat, making it look like with like wet pants and stuff, is not the best visual. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
I hope to see pictures from it. I will be taking pictures for sure with the friend that I am running my virtual race with. I felt very bad asking her to change and run virtually with me, but we will do it virtually and have a great time.
It's really cute. It's really cute. Try to do it in person some year, because
I know
they have like all the Pittsburgh thing. They have like Turner's tea, and they put up pierogies, and it's like every Pittsburgh thing you can think of to have it. So they really do it up. It's cool.
I am so disappointed I can't do it in person this year. So next year for sure.
Yeah. But okay.
Absolutely.
Hey, great talking to you. Thanks for
great
coming on
talking
again.
to you. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
All right. See you.